Hello. Today we're going to talk about the idea of moving through it. So, how can you move through it, right? Balancing the bittersweet and then moving through it. And we're going to talk about how your creative practices, whether that is the visual arts, whether it's more dance and singing and cooking and things like that. They're all creative practices. Gardening is a creative practice. Hiking, in my opinion, is a creative practice in a lot of ways. It's a connection with nature. And so how can you use your creative practices to help you move through it? And the first step, though, is awareness of engaging with the wisdom of cycles, right? So you are aware of where you are in this present moment, but also aware of where you are within whatever cycle you are in. And so when we are able to learn about the wisdom of cycles and use other cycles that happen in nature, other cycles that happen in our lives, and how we show up in those cycles, how we hold those experiences, and how we can move through different experiences and different cycles, then we can apply that wisdom to whatever cycle we are in the current moment. And so if you think about the seasons, spring, summer, winter, fall, not in that order, spring, summer, fall, winter, right? Each one of those seasons has a certain energy about it. Each one of those seasons has a particular role or function within the larger cycle. So I always love to look to nature for understanding, for that wisdom, right? So in the spring, things are born. And we often think of that as, okay, well, that's the beginning, something's being born, right? But a lot has to go into something being born, and those are the fruits of whatever cycle came before that. And so there's this continuous moving, this continuous growth through different cycles as we transform one experience and we carry forward something from that experience into the next to help us grow and focus on that cycle. And oftentimes, many cycles are happening at the same time to contribute to whatever one you're in right now. So engage in the wisdom of the cycles. Are you in spring? Are you in summer? Are you in fall? Are you in winter? Where are you personally? What is going on for you? And what is the life cycle of that cycle, right? What does it look like? Maybe you don't know. Maybe you don't know what the end of that cycle is so that you're coming into the beginning of a new one. And maybe you want or don't want that cycle to end. Oftentimes we try to rush through the things that are uncomfortable, and we want the things that we're enjoying to last and last and last and last, right? But each part of that cycle, each phase, each experience within it is a precious gift of its own. And so how we experience each part of that cycle also can have a lot to do with the awareness of what is its purpose. What is our purpose in this moment right now? What is the meaning of this experience at this moment within this larger cycle? And so as you tune into where you are in that cycle and know that all parts of that are important, then you can use that to help you move through it, because you can see where you're going. Even if you don't know what that end goal looks like, regardless if it's something that you're excited to get to or something that you're dreading, right? But if you can find that peace in the moment right now, then you use that awareness to give you a container, right? To hold that experience within and know where you are within it. Now, a container doesn't mean that you are it's not constricting, right? Like I've talked about form and no form. So within that form, you have that room to grow, but you know where you're going. You know where you're headed. You know where you've been, and so you can use that just as a framework to understand where you are, but that doesn't limit your growth, right? It might help you focus your growth if that's something that you need or are looking for, and it might help you understand what has come before or what you're experiencing right now or what your next step is. So if you know you're in the season of summer, and I'm just using this as an example, if there's a better aligned cycle for you, use that as a frame of reference. So this is my frame of reference, right? This is my form within the no form, or that works with the no form. So I understand life, no form, although there's a form within that too, but through nature, through cycles. And so that's the form that I am speaking of right now. One way that I use this concept is through a daily practice with mandalas. And mandalas are, in its most simple form, it's art within a circle, or using a circle to express something in an artistic way, right? So a mandala is a circle, basically. And the circle for me is the form. But what I do within that, the practice that I create within that, is very intuitive. It is very connected, and it flows. I tune in and do it in a very conscious manner of just being aware and present in my body, right? Aware and present of my connection with spirit, and aware and present of whatever it is that's bubbling up or wanting to come through me in that day, in that moment. And that's the no form. So the circle is a form, just gives me a framework to work within. And then the practice itself is the no form. So practice is a continuous returning to something, whether you're practicing the flute, or you're practicing soccer, or you're practicing your connection with spirit and your language with spirit, right? Like prayer is a practice in a lot of ways. It's you practicing how to communicate, how to listen, right? And so is, when you're learning to drive a car, you go out and you practice how to do that. And at some point, yesterday actually, I was driving and I became aware. I have this saying that often I'll say, I'll become aware of my awareness, right? So as I was sitting at a stoplight, I became aware of the fact that what I was looking at and what I was taking in was the information on all of the road signs that were in front of me. And I had this kind of connection of a moment that I had when I was in Edinburgh, Scotland, and I was riding in the car. I wasn't driving in the car at that point, but I was riding in the car, and in a lot of ways it was an interesting experience because I was sitting in where I would be in the driver's seat, because in Scotland they drive on the left side of the road and on the right side of the car, right? So the driver is on the opposite side of the car of where we are in the US, and the car is in the opposite lane, or on the opposite side of the road as where we are in the US. So I've had a lot of experiences like that, but this one in particular was coming to mind because as I was sitting in that seat, which felt very much like the driver's seat, but it wasn't. I was a passenger. And we were driving on these, kind of back roads. I was with a person who was taking me. We were going to have an adventure for that day, and they were local and knew the roads really well. And she was driving, and everything was very fluid and normal for her. This was just another day of driving around in Scotland. But for me, I was taking in everything. All of the signs on the roads were different than they are here. And I could generally understand the meaning, right, what their purpose was, but each one of them were very apparent to me, and I had to think about them. I had to process them because it wasn't something that I was well practiced at, right? Those were not signs. That was not a language that I understood. Just, what's the word I want to use? It's like when you fluently, right? So I wasn't fluent in the language of those road signs, but I am fluent in the language of the road signs here. And oftentimes I'm not even I'm looking at the road signs, but I'm not looking at them with conscious awareness unless I need to have some information. I'm looking for some information, right? So because I've practiced driving for quite a long time at this point, the language of the road signs are pretty much, they're there and I know they're there. And there are certain ones that I'm looking for at certain times for information. Like I look at a stoplight to see what color it is so that I know, do I need to slow down? Do I need to speed up? Do I need to stop? Right? Can I keep going at the pace I'm going? And those are markers. And so yesterday when I came to this stoplight, there were a lot of signs. I don't know what it was with this intersection, and maybe all intersections are like this, but there were so many signs. It was, no turn on red and follow your signal only. And I kind of had to start laughing because I was thinking, gosh, there's so much information here and it's almost too much information. But then I had this awareness of, well, at certain times I might need that information, and I currently in this moment don't need all of this information, but I could see different scenarios where I needed the different information. And so that is something that I'm well practiced at, right? So I generally am not thinking about it that much. And even though I'm in that process and I'm aware in that moment, or hopefully aware, I try to be aware when I'm driving, right? But sometimes we have moments where we drift off into thought process of something else and we're multitasking in a lot of ways, having a conversation or thinking about something or preparing for wherever we're going mentally as we're driving. But then at other times we have that very focused conscious awareness. And so while I'm not necessarily in a place right now with driving a car where I come back and practice it, I still am practicing. Every time I drive a car, I'm practicing, right? I'm in the practice of driving a car. I'm in the practice of being a driver, or I'm in the practice of being a passenger. And so when we do something over and over and over, we keep returning to that practice, then we continue to get better and better and better and better at it. And when we do that practice consciously, we actively engage in the process of coming back to that practice with awareness, with intention, then we are engaging with it in an even more powerful way. So for me, mandalas are a way for me to connect with my imagination. And imagination is a very important part of creation. Without imagining something as a possibility, then we're not going to create it in our lives, right? If we've never imagined, well, you can create something by accident sometimes too, because you are thinking about it, right? If you're calling in the energy of that over and over. But this is the process of pause and reflect so that you're not reacting, you're not creating something that you don't actually want to create in your life, whether it's stress or misery, discomfort, through your unconscious reactions to something, reacting something over and over again, or even just being kind of stuck in this pattern and not realizing you're there. So when you're aware of that pattern, then you can make a conscious decision, you can make a deliberate action to make change, and you keep coming back to that process. You keep coming back to that decision until it becomes second nature to you, until it becomes natural, right? Until it just flows and you become fluent in that language of that, in the energy of that situation and that particular energy and that particular thing in your life, whatever it is. So when I come back to the practice of imagination, that's me practicing what my imagination looks like and how I put that into creation. How I take an idea, I take an inspiration, and I manifest that through first giving it life, right? You embody a thought through words or through form, through dance, through drawing and painting. You're taking it from being a concept, being an idea, being an inspiration, to giving it form of some sort. And so that's why words are so powerful. When we speak something, when we speak an intention, then we are giving it life. We are giving it body. And we're giving it a physical form. And so once it has been put into a physical form, then that helps move that process of creating it in a different physical form even faster and easier. So when you repeat something over and over, whether it's an affirmation, whether it's a prayer, whether it's an intention, whatever word you want to use to describe how you're doing that, or what the intention behind it is and what the practice behind it is, then that is helping you create it in another physical form, right? So if it's a relationship, if it's a form of abundance, if it's a form of prosperity, right? If you're trying to call in or manifest a different job, a different career, if you are even another cycle or another phase or a different format of something that is existing, right? If you want to create a change in an existing relationship or a change in an existing career or profession or calling of some sort. So when you have that divine inspiration, that imagination, right? And then you engage with the language of the universe works in the language of energy and feelings. You have to feel it in your body first before you can manifest it. You have to align with the energy of that feeling. And as you do that, then you are already engaging with it, already aligning with it. So think of a time in your life where you are aligned with a specific energy. Maybe for you, that's in your meditation practice, or maybe it's in prayer, or when you sing in church, right? It could be that's you feeling in total alignment with that practice. Or maybe it's when you're hiking in nature. Maybe it's when you're cooking. Maybe it's when you're dancing. Maybe it's when you're making love with your partner. Maybe it's, when you're holding your baby or your grandson or your granddaughter, or petting a dog. There's so many times when it's that sense of peace, it's that sense of joy, and you know that you're aligned with your true self, right? Your connection with the world, with spirit, with the earth, whatever that connection is for you, that feels completely aligned and completely pure. And so as you have that connection, that inspiration, oftentimes that's when that inspiration comes. And that's when clarity comes. So you're pausing, you're aware, you're in total awareness, and then that clarity comes and the inspiration comes. And as that inspiration comes in, then the next step is, what's that action that you need to take in order to make that happen? And so for me, this process of working with mandalas helps me process that entire thing. And it helps me to be still and but also in motion. So I have a lot of different practices, right? I have a pretty strong meditation practice where in those moments, I am still in my body. I'm not moving in the same way I'm moving when I'm in a creative practice. And sometimes that's what I need, right? Sometimes I need to be still. But sometimes my mind is very busy with what's going on in my life, and it's hard for me to sit in that stillness. And so I need another thing to help me work through some of that so then I can get to that place of stillness. And so there are times when I am far more active in my creative practice, or far more active with the mandala practice, or other creative practices that I have. Sometimes I'm more in the flow with my meditation practice. Sometimes all I want to do is read. Sometimes, there's just different things that have different ways of finding that space. And some people need that structure, that form of the same thing regularly, and some people need the no form, right? The ability to flow in and out of different practices. And so whatever you need is something that you have to decide, because you can take inspiration from other people, from other practices, and maybe you get inspiration from lots of practices, but how do you create what is sacred to you and what is aligned for you? So I'm going to end this video by quickly showing you a couple of the mandalas that I've worked with recently, and then I have a couple other videos, one that's more explaining the technical part of just what this practice, like how do you start this practice, and then one that is just an example of me working, in case you want some inspiration from that. Feel free to watch all of them or not. It's up to you. So this is what I would say my what it looks like when I start out. So oftentimes I'll have this, I think in the video I'm making this one and this one, and then this one is then the separate one where I'm just working. There's no talking, I don't think, in that one. So these are, I believe, 3-inch circles, and I just sit down and let it flow. Like, I draw the circle, there's my form, and then I tune into my breath, and I go from there. So I'll work on pieces of, this is just ripped out of a sketchbook, and I just work on these pieces of paper, and sometimes they look like this, and sometimes they look like this, right? So in some cases, I am using more color. Sometimes I put a bunch of them on the page to begin with. Sometimes I do it more organically. Oftentimes I work in a bigger format, just because this is something that I have been doing for a long time. And so for me, this size is generally what I'm working with. But like I said, this is something that if you're just beginning this practice, start small, start with something that is tangible and accessible to you, and try it out. Don't try to give yourself a goal that is going to feel overwhelming to you and then is going to fade away quickly, right? Give yourself a goal that seems ridiculously easy, because then you're going to find a lot of success with it, and you're going to feel really good about it, and then you're going to be an overachiever, right? You're going to go in and say, oh, well, I did this. I can do this every day, right? And you're finding those small successes, and that's giving you that joy to continue doing that process, even when there are days when it's really hard, right? When this is completely impossible to do on a particular day, something this size, just one of these, might not be, right? So that helps you return to that practice even in times when it seems impossible, right? Or it seems really difficult or challenging to do something. I can make myself say, you know what, I'm going to spend 5 minutes on this, because I don't know what to do right now. I'm just in this place where everything feels blah, and I'm going to do something that I know brings me joy. And even just to get started with this, all I need is a circle. I don't even need a circle, but for me, that's kind of that marker to say, this is what I'm doing, this is where I'm starting. And then whatever comes up from that comes up. Like this one here, I've layered on top of. But when I did this one, it basically was just a kind of muddy mess of color. And that's what I was feeling at that moment. Just kind of blah, right? And I've gone back into it and worked on it because, not because I wanted to change it or fix it, but because I was still in that energy. So I find that sometimes when I'm going back to something, it's like, wait a minute, there was something there that I wasn't quite done with, right? So, and then you'll see that I have text on a lot of my pages. So I have a journal. There's my journal right here, actually, that I write in, and sometimes I'm just writing pages of text, but other times I'm creating something more visually, and then I'm adding text into that. So here's another example, and I'm not sure how well this will show up, especially because I've painted on it now, but what this is, there's text all the way around. So this is a fun thing to do, even if you're doing it in the 3-inch circle or a 2-inch circle or whatever, however big it is. I just create a circle, and then I have an organic shape inside. It doesn't really have a direction that it goes in. It can be anything. For this one, I was working through, I was preparing for an upcoming conference that I was presenting at about weaving together your spiritual and creative practices. And for this, I was looking at, okay, internally or inside of this, these are all action things, right? These are all things that I do that are very creative in a way that is actionable, right? Is very outward. And then all of the blue things were things that are very receptive, things that are fulfilling to me, that I am in an action more of receiving. And so I have these warm colors and these cool colors. And really what I did was I drew the circle, and then I drew the shape, and then inside of the shape I used text. I just wrote words, and I made them long so that they went, the same shape. But you could just, journal inside of it, and then do the same thing outside, and then I painted over it. So I'll show it up again closely so you can kind of see what that looks like. So yeah, just some ideas for you. Like I said, I'll post 2 more videos for you. One is talking about the practice, which is a little bit repetitive from what I was just talking about, but it's more focused on this is how you start this practice. And then the second one is just an example of me working, so you can see, this is really how long it takes to do this. It's me making one of these mandalas from beginning to end. All right. I hope you enjoy this practice, and I'd love to see some of your work if you decide to do it.